Welcome back to the channel, everyone. How you doing? I just want to say I appreciate you guys being here for just a couple minutes every day. I appreciate you guys. So we are going to talk about another classic review. I feel like I haven't done one of these in a while, like a legit classic book. I feel like I just haven't done it in a while, and I don't know why. I just haven't, man. But I have made a video in the past about classic books I would like to read, and this is one of them. So I decided, what the hell, we're gonna read it, and that is The Catcher in the Rye. I used to call it The Catcher and the Rye. I don't know why. Just always did. But I finally read this book. And I was sitting there thinking, oh man, because I started reading it at work. And I did not expect it to be first person, mind you, which really blew me away. Because I'm so used to reading classic novels and they're never first person. But oh man, for one, when I was reading this book, I actually didn't really care for the main character as much as I thought. And the way that he would write it is just, oh man, the character was very judgmental throughout this book. The whole point of reading this book, I sat there and thought, like, what is the plot of this book? Because it spans only for, I think, about 4 days long. And you're following a character named Holden. And Holden is about 17 throughout this whole book. And he talks about the school he's at and about how he always gets kicked out. Because currently Holden is in a spot where he is getting expelled. And they're about to go on Christmas break, which is on a Wednesday. He'll be going back home to his parents. And he decided, I'm just going to leave, just hang out until Wednesday. At first I was like, oh, all right, whatever. Because he said he had some money to go do whatever. And before that, the whole time he had a roommate. And then he had this guy that lived, like, they shared a bathroom, and the guy would just go in there and bother him. And all he did is just complain about these people. And at first I was like, oh man, I don't really like this guy. He's very judgmental. The more and more I thought about it, the more and more you kept seeing the result of this book, of how the character was. I actually was starting to understand more about this book, about Holden. And I think I was watching some like short reviews of these after I finished the book, because I was trying to figure out if I had the same feelings of others. And a lot of people are like, oh, this book sucks, the character sucks, the book's sexist, the book's this and this. And then I was like, I got those vibes somewhat, but I also got the vibes of how this book was actually written. And I think the people who think this book is terrible and sucks and knows reasons of why it might be sexist or racist or whatever, I think it's because they're not looking at the deeper part of this book about Holden's character. And I think that's the most important thing. The book itself is not that good, honestly, but it's the character of Holden that makes this book very, very good, because you slowly learn about stuff with Holden. It's very relatable to a lot of people, especially with how he deals with depression, how he dealt with SA, how he deals with his siblings even. Just because, to me personally, in my life, I used to, when I was younger, like, I was about 17 years old, and I wasn't very good at school. I was only good in some classes. I was really good in writing, which is hilarious that Holden was too. While I was sitting there thinking about it, it hit me pretty hard that Holden was talking about he had an older brother who was a writer, who was out in Hollywood, always making all this money, and his parents always talked highly of it. And I sat there and thought about it. I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes me think of myself. Now, I'm not going to talk about my personal life, but there is things that resonated with me about that, where it's just the jealousy and envy towards other success, because you feel like, well, I'm just not good, and screw those people. And that's what it kind of feels like. Holden talks about how he wants a simple life, how he just wants to live out in the woods and build a cabin and never talk. There was like a long monologue where all he does is talk about he wants to work at a gas station, then build a log cabin, have enough money saved up, and live out there and become a deaf mute and never ever talk to a single soul. And then he'll meet a girl and tell her that he's pretending to be a deaf mute, and she could do the same, so they'll never talk to anybody. When you think about those things, it's very deep of what he's trying to say. And I think when people talk about, oh, this book's not good, this and that, it's like, you're truly not, you're reading it for the enjoyment. You're not reading to understand. And I think that's a very important thing in this book compared to other books. So like when I read The Catcher in the Rye, at first I was trying to read it for enjoyment, but then I actually was reading it to understand. And if I read like Slender Man. I'm reading it for enjoyment. I understand what the plot of Slender Man is. But that's why I think The Catcher in the Rye is such a deep book that I think people just don't understand. And there's elements of this book where Holden talks about how he is, like, horny. He's like, I'm always horny. I always want to have sex. He tries to meet up with some girls that he knows and tries to, have sex with them. But he himself always chicken out about it. And then he actually paid to have, a sex worker. He couldn't do it. She got completely naked. He gave her the money and everything, but he never did anything with her because he says in reality he's still a virgin. And he said, I've always could have done it, but I'm just really scared. I've always been scared because he's like, I don't want to try and do those things to a woman. I don't want to do those things to her because I look at her more than that. And he's like, I could have done it in the past, but he's like, I never could because he doesn't want to just do it. He wants to have a deep connection with a woman. And he always mentions a woman named Jane. And it really hits hard of the self-respect he has for women in these elements. Yes, he did pay for a prostitute, but he stopped himself from actually wanting to do it because he cherished how deep a connection that is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be meaningless or anything. It's supposed to be deep and connecting. And I think a lot of people who don't look at it that way don't actually think about that deep level of understanding of The Catcher in the Rye. And he does talk a lot about this kind of stuff. He goes back home, he sneaks into his home, and he talks to his sister, and they talk forever. And his sister called him out. She's like, you don't like anything. Name one thing you like. And he's like, oh, I like things. But he didn't answer it. He didn't answer it for a long time. He sat back and he just thought about it. And I think that was such a deep thing to think about, that he couldn't tell you what he liked, what he truly liked. And then he said his brother, Allie, who is dead. And his sister talked about how that doesn't count. And his sister's 12 years old, and she's telling her 17-year-old brother this. And when you think about these kind of things, it's really scary and depressing when you think about, when you ask someone, what do you truly like? All you do is complain. What do you truly like? And if they can't answer it, they have a lot of things they need to work on. And that's what this book is telling a lot of people. And I think the people who don't recognize this kind of character of Holden are the people who might be like a Holden. And that's a scary reality to really think about. If you can't recognize the issues of this book, of what Holden is truly going through, you might be dealing with the same stuff. There was a part where Holden left his house and he went to a teacher's house, and he was talking to the teacher, and the teacher let him stay the night, and all of a sudden Holden was sleeping on the couch and he felt somebody doing this to his head, playing with his hair, and Holden got freaked out when he left. And he said, when I was younger, people used to do worse things to me. That really hit me harder too, and I'm like, that explains why he has a hard time wanting to be close with people. He has a lot of pent up things that he doesn't like with people, and it explains a lot why he's judgmental, why he's the way he is. And I think that's just such a deep understanding of this book. This book's only like 230 pages, but I guess I never really thought about how deep this book really is to me while reading it. I went in there expecting it to be some boring classic literature book, but I'm like, wow, this book is deep. And I think it's important for people to read this book just to understand the values, the lessons of how this book works. I think a lot of people look over it because it's a classic book. A lot of people just feel like classic literature is just boring. And I don't think that's true. I think classic literature hits really well if you actually take time to read it. Don't read it for enjoyment. If you want to read, a fun cute little romance novel, or a fun fantasy novel that's just supposed to shut your brain off and you're just supposed to enjoy it, that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that kind of reading. But I think classic literature is very important to read. I think the underlying messages in these books are important. I think like The Catcher in the Rye is so important for people who deal with depression, people who have dealt with SA. I think those kind of things are important to read and understand. The way that Holden goes into every lesson of life is just deep, and it really resonated with me so much. There was times when I was reading at work, I was just page turning. What I do sometimes, I'll take a book to work, and then I take a book home, and I'll read one at home, one at work. And I was reading Jujutsu Kaisen at home, so when I was done with that, I brought this home, and I just binged it all in a day. And I read like 100 pages, the last 100 pages or so in one sitting, because this book is so deep, and I just don't think people truly understand it. And the people out there that say this book sucks, you have your opinion. That's perfectly fine. I'm never ever going to say you're wrong, but I think you might not have gotten the message of why this book is very, very good. If you guys made it to the end of the video, I do appreciate it. Make sure you guys check out all my socials down below. What do you guys think about The Catcher in the Rye? Did you guys like it, or did you guys not really like it? And if you didn't like it, please let me know. I would love to know, because when it comes to classic books, I actually want to understand why people don't like them. And I really don't like the logic when people say, oh, the book just sucked. Why did it suck, though? That's all I always wanted to hear. And with this book, I just can't see why it was bad. I really enjoyed it. It blew my mind of how good this book was. And of course, make sure you guys stay safe, stay humble, and tell someone you love them. I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay weird.